So since coming to Highball last, the whole of the section of the wall behind me has been rerouted. So today I'm just going to do as many of the routes as I can and get a sense for what my limit is. I've already done 3 of the 9C climbing test challenges today, so I'm already quite fatigued. Got quite a pump in my forearm from the dead hang, so it's going to be interesting to see how that affects my climbing. So let's jump on the wall and give it a go. Shout out to Ollie and the rest of the route setters for creating another set of problems which cater to the whole range of climbers. At Highball here in Norwich, the team tend to take down a section on a Monday and then reroute it on Tuesday. And this is being filmed on a Wednesday morning, so I was lucky enough to be one of the first to explore this set of boulders. And as you can see, there were plenty of routes to choose from. Now, most of the routes tend to be left ungraded for a week or two, and I quite like this because it's easy to avoid any problem with a number which looks intimidating. And sessions like this are a chance to explore without being too concerned about the outcomes. Now, in this case, the first 2 routes in the corner here are relatively easy warm-up climbs, and my focus is upon moving under control with careful foot placement and really trying to be conscious of my body position and my centre of gravity. Again, this purple route doesn't provide anything that's particularly technically challenging, but it does give me a chance to work on the 3 fundamentals of climbing. I've been studying a course, which perhaps I'll talk about a little later, which talks about the 5 atomic elements of climbing. And the first 3 are all about tension, position, and then rhythm. And so during these early climbs, that's what I'm focusing upon. Now, on this red route, I'm trying to also pay attention to keeping my body nice and close to the wall. At the end here, you'll see I think I brought my left foot up a little bit high, and I'm a bit clumsy with one of my foot placements where I slip, which you'll see in a moment. But I'm warming up nicely. It's 3 for 3 for flashes, and it is a nice confidence builder to start the session. I do make a point of down climbing all the way to the bottom of the route for these first few problems as I start limbering up, because I think that's also an important skill to develop. Now, I also flashed the blue and black routes here, but they weren't particularly interesting footage for you. And I didn't on this session climb the yellow, cyan or the red routes, although 2 of those I did complete on the next session, and perhaps I'll record some footage of that. But this pink route on the corner here is really interesting because it's composed almost entirely of 2-finger pockets, which is a style of climbing I haven't done very often, so I enjoyed this as a bit of a change. I like how I get my body position nice and low here so that I can climb on straight arms to the top of the route. So nothing too challenging so far, but really enjoyable set of problems, and I'm now warmed up ready for something that might require a little bit more of an effort. So now we're on the other side of the wall. All of the overhanging routes on the face section were quite challenging. I did have a go at the green route, which I'll show you a little later. But on this black problem, my focus this time was starting to emphasize elasticity when reaching for holds that are further away by contracting in the opposite direction and then pulsing upwards. And this is a climbing technique that I've been watching some of the better climbers on YouTube doing, and I'm trying to mimic that in my own climbing style. Now on this yellow route, I'm performing that bad habit again by trying to get onto the wall before I have a clear plan in mind, which is why I end up switching feet so often here. but finally I do commit, and then the rest of the climb's fairly straightforward. I just wanted to mention whilst I'm doing this route that I've found particular value in the Catalyst Training YouTube channel with Louis Parkinson, who's an excellent coach, and I've joined up as a paid member. I think it's something like £3.99 a month, but it gives me access to weekly training plans, a Discord community, and additional video content, which I'm finding really helpful. So if you haven't checked them out, then do take a look at Catalyst Training. Now, that white route was a bit of a non-starter from me. It's very difficult, but this cyan looked within my range. And as I'm climbing this, you'll notice that there are a few younger climbers who cross the path of the recording. And I love the fact that Highball has so many young climbers. It runs a lot of youth development classes to help raise the next generation of top-grade boulderers. Incidentally, at the end here, I perform a very high heel hook, which is probably a little gratuitous on reflection. I could have just foot swapped and evened out my balance there for matching at the top. But it was a good test of flexibility. Now here I've moved across to the competition wall, which was also rerouted quite recently, and I confess I already had the beta for this start because it popped up at the centre's Instagram account, so I can't claim any particular innovation here. And I'm not sure I'd have got the flash if I'd approached this problem blind, but I really like these kind of tricky starts. And the rest of the route was fairly positive. There were a couple of really decent footholds, and it didn't present too many problems. I don't know if this blue route was set by the same person who set the yellow route you've just seen, but we have another interesting start here where you have to heel hook against the first hold in order to reach down and do the two-finger start, and then the rest is a bit of a balancy slab. Fortunately, I have the reach to be able to get the top hold here directly from the second hold, but my son has to balance all the way across because he's slightly shorter. I have climbed this peach route in a previous session, but I came back to it on this day because I really like the range of shapes it requires the climber to move into and through. I sometimes think of boulder problems as being a little bit like music. Each one has its own rhythm or character, and some become like earworms that I keep coming back to. Is that something you experience as well, I wonder, or is this something quirky to do with me? I included this purple overhanging route because my son became obsessed with this one in our last session together. It requires the climber to hold good body tension to prevent cutting away more than necessary, and he hadn't quite dialed this skill in, so he'd tire his arms out before getting to the last hold. I'm happy to report that after more than an hour of working the problem, he did complete it, and I admire his perseverance and tenacity. On this yellow route, I corrected myself after I lifted that right leg higher than it needed to be, and I found a much simpler and I think a more elegant solution. I'm also happier with my foot swaps now, which are more accurate and efficient, I think. but I do still, of course, have a very long way to go. And so I thought I'd finish with 3 problems I was unable to complete in this session, in which I'll be returning to in my next session. First, there's this purple route. None of the holds were very positive, and this is after about 15 attempts, so I'm sure I'm missing some critical beta here. That backward roll was probably the best executed move in that sequence. And here I'm back on the face of the new wall, and this steeply overhanging green route was another problem with slopers that looked like jugs. That having been said, I saw several climbers complete this with ease who are not so far above my level, so this should go with a bit more time on the wall. And as for this green route, I really have no idea how even to begin. It would seem that big slopers are my current kryptonite, and I'm looking forward to diving deep on some of these projects in the weeks ahead. So thanks for sharing this episode with me. The next one will all be about the 9C climbing strength test. And until then, take good care.